So, thank you everybody for coming today. I wanted to check, can people hear well enough? We do have a microphone, but be simple.
Bob and I are having a problem, but other than that.
So today we're gathering to celebrate the life of Sandy. Sandy wanted her friends and family to gather in one of her happy spaces. This was her church. Reverend Denise Finnegan is right here. She graciously opened up the church for us. And as she mentioned, this is Sandy's church too. It's a beautiful place. Thank you so very much. But she wanted to gather in one of her happy places rather than dwell on sadness. We wanted to bring forth positive and happy stories which reflected her life. This was Sandy's desire. So for the next hour or so, we'll be sharing as a group together folks to share their Sandy stories. And afterwards, we'll go downstairs to the commons area for refreshment and fellowship. So, if we go a little bit long or whatever, we can still talk downstairs also. If everybody's having a chance. It's a great turnout here. Thank you so much. And as we're a pretty diverse group, Sandy had friends in many different areas. Please, when you want to come and share your story, stand up. Let us know who you are and your relationship to Sandy, so people can know that. I also wanted to mention that I am recording this session, little camera over here, mainly for Sandy and my granddaughter Lena. Maybe in some years you can hear some of these stories, as well as for several friends that were not able to make it today. So let me kick off some of the Sandy stories. I'm Scott Hughes, Sandy's husband. Sandy and I first met in January of 1975. Doing quick math here, yes, that's 47 years ago. In an elevator in Beloit College in Wisconsin. And actually, well, Sandy was in the elevator. I was on the elevator on top of it. And Sandy gets on the elevator and looks up through this little hatch. It's like, what are you doing up there? So I said, well, I'm rewiring the elevator such that when you press a button, you go to, random floors. It's like, oh, okay. That was the start of Sandy being very gracious about a lot of crazy ideas and visions as we go on. We were both chemistry majors. We remained great friends for those next 3 years at Beloit. In our senior year, in the wintertime, both Sandy and I broke up from long 3-year relationships with other people on the same week, just coincidentally. And as we were hurting, we found each other, and we started a rebound relationship. That lasted another 44 years. Sandy was a person who loved people and loved helping people. And we've shared our lives and all aspects of our lives together. I'll miss her cover. So, let me turn this over to the next. Lisa, where's Lisa? Lisa's over here. Lisa wanted to say a few words.
I've actually got a couple letters to read from people who couldn't be here, but who were very dear friends of Sandy and Scott. And the first one I'm going to read is from Paula Horton. And Paula says she deeply regrets that she's unable to attend the celebration of Sandy's life due to a recent significant exposure to COVID. She writes, "My story about Sandy is really about Sandy and Scott. because so many things they did were the result of a joint effort. These memories are from several years ago, so they lack some detail, but they are a source of my admiration for Sandy and Scott. My story contains just a few small examples of many that I could mention, but it demonstrates the amount of time and effort they put into their commitments and the level of caring they both felt for those they were serving. She recalls the religious education classes that they taught. They were very creative and went above and beyond what was suggested in the basic curriculum. One program was about the many ways in which a God figure is depicted and what can be learned from these various ways of interpreting God. I can't remember the name of the curriculum, may have been the many faces of God, but what I recall about Sandy and Scott's interpretation of the curriculum is that they didn't simply put out the materials provided by the curriculum, but they spent time modifying the lesson to suit the needs of our children, including fancy computer-generated images and other enhancements. They also taught the coming of age class for 8th graders. My son was one of the people who participated in it. And once again, they enhanced the curriculum, leading to a stronger connection for our children. And I can tell you from what I witnessed at our church, that Scott and Sandy definitely were the dynamic duo, and you always saw them together. And then enhancing what was going on in our church, definitely, that was a part of it. The second letter I'm reading comes from Karen Lawrence. Karen is actually in Paris right now. She says, I'm away, but my thoughts will be with everyone at the special service honoring our Sandy. And I'm writing this especially for Scott and Alex. Sandy has been my special friend for the past 5 years or so. Our houses are equidistant from Knight Park, perfect for rendezvous and daily walks, when we talked and laughed about everything. We were vegetarians together, active at church, and then busy with the North Wind schooner. We talked about our past, our projects, and our concerns. Sandy was so easy to be with, lighthearted. I loved getting her short texts throughout the day and making plans together. Being with Sandy was like a little party every time. And Sandy was thoughtful and generous. One day, sitting on her porch, I admired her shoes and complained that I didn't have anything like them for an upcoming trip. Sandy took her shoes off, made me try them on. They fit, and Sandy insisted that I keep them. Typical Sandy. I started volunteering for a local nonprofit food rescue, and my assignment was to pick up a carload of surplus produce and deliver it to an agency in Camden. And I complained to Sandy about the parking being bad, and I was always worried that my car was going to be towed. Before the next pickup, Sandy presented me with a set of specially designed magnetic decals for my car so that I would not get ticketed or towed. The coordinator at Food Rescue was so impressed that she ordered these for her other drivers. Again, typical Sandy. And I see you nodding your heads. Yes. On the North Wind, some of us wished we had a map of the waterfront to share with our passengers to make the sails a little more interesting. We talked about it a little bit, then Sandy went home and identified the terminals, businesses along both sides of the river using Google Satellite. By the next time we sailed, she had a professionally produced graphic to hand out. Again, typical Sandy. 3 months ago, Sandy invited me on a special week-long sailing trip that she and Scott had planned. I loved our time together. It was the trip of a lifetime. Sandy made the most of every day, even as she coped with the inconvenience and discomfort of illness. I'm only just starting to realize what an enormous gap I feel in my life now that she is gone. I think a lot of us can say that. The next one.
Yeah.
You ready for another story?
Sure.
I wrote a letter to Sandy. Dear Sandy, I'm forever grateful for your friendship, your thoughtfulness and generosity. You were so abundant, you taught me how to be more like you. But I need more lessons. This is just one of the reasons I miss you so much. Between your day job, being a terrific mom and beloved wife of Scott, and all the volunteering and mentoring, I just have no idea how you did it all. Your bravery through your illness was astounding. We celebrated all the successful milestones with her friends and did not dwell on the treatment failures. Sandy made me a better person. I think she made us all better people. I know you don't, Sandy, you wouldn't want us to be sad, but we are. But I will go forward and promise to make you proud of us. We will be more loving, generous, and humble. I'm not saying goodbye, because I know you'll always be with me. Love, Mary. I met Scott and Sandy in college, and fortunately they moved back to New Jersey in 1990, I believe it was, and we were able to have a good friendship since then. Thank you.
Here are three things about Sandy. She had a fascinating speaking voice. Just a hint of the nasal, but not honky or barky. Definitely a girl voice, but throaty with just enough grit to instantly establish her credibility. Making her laugh was a joyful treat. She laughed sincerely and without pretense. I always knew whether or not a joke was funny if Sandy laughed. At one point, I took a job teaching remedial reading. She asked how it was going, and I replied honestly that I had no idea what I was doing. The students just stared at me accusingly, wondering whether they would ever get their money's worth out of the community college. Shortly, she appeared with a stack of books on the reading process. I presented a problem, she presented a solution. We discussed and improved. Since childhood, the anticipation of social interaction is making anxious to an extreme extent. And I'm fine when I'm among people, but anticipating the event, right. Oddly, that didn't happen with Sandy. When we made plans to get together, I was always eager to see her. Now, what does that say about me? And what does that say about Sandy? And given her recent interest in spiritualism, I can honestly say that if she would care to get in touch in the future, I would love to talk to her.
Alex, do you?
Hi, my name is Alex, Sandy's daughter, and this is Lena, Sandy's granddaughter. And my story is a bit more pinpointed. So when my grandma died, her mom died. My grandma then decided not to have a funeral or a celebration of life. And Sandy respected her wishes. Yet I had a feeling that grandma's friends and family want to say nice things about her. So I thought maybe they can express in postcards, my grandma's favorite medium. And Mom made some alterations by making them, putting stories about grandma, about stories in the emails, and putting them on a trifold poster board like you see in a science fair. And Mom placed different images on the stories, and it's a very beautiful board to commemorate grandma. Now, this kind of reminds me of something. Oh yeah, the stories that we're sharing right now to commemorate Mom. So it seems like Mom has started a tradition. Maybe I'll have my stories shared about me when I die, and in the 22nd century, Lena will have stories shared about her. Even though it's only the beginning right now.
Anybody? Jack?
Half hour, stop you said. I'm Jack Hughes. I'm no relation, although Sandra was like a sister. Even though I'm much older than her, she was like a big sister to me. We served on the board of directors of Best Work Industry Show Line together for years. We both worked for the North Wind schooner, as you heard, trying to. One of her favorite things was trying to build yeah, sure. Build things for youth to learn more about the sailing and about the river and about ecology, and she loved that. We actually were on Zoom meetings together on occasion, and all those times, one of the best times for her, of course, was the arrival of Lena. And that was a mixed blessing because I just kept getting peppered with pictures of Lena. Sandra holding Lena, holding in her arms. I said, oh no, not another picture. I think was the only grandchild ever born, you know. During all those times we spent together, hours, and I didn't tell you about other times we spent together too, Scott. But anyhow, we won't. A little late for confession, but anyhow, my memory's failing, as is my hearing, eyesight, and my knees, and anyhow, we won't go there. But as far as I can remember, I've never seen Sandy frown. I've never seen her frown. She's always approached every problem we had on desk work or with the boat. She always approached it with a positive and a pleasant attitude, you know. And she, so I always remember her with a smile. You know, I don't even think there's any pictures of her frowning. Well, maybe you have one, but I never saw one. Anyhow, God bless Sandy. May she rest in peace.
Does anybody? Go ahead.
I'm Sandy's brother, and Sandy, thinking about a story when I was coming up here. Sandy was quite a bit older than me. She was 10 years older than me, and she would frequently be stuck babysitting me since she was the oldest one. And I remember on one occasion, she was at home and my parents were at work, and she had promised to make me fudge. I was very excited about that, and I proceeded to sit down at the TV and watch cartoons with my favorite green blanket. I was kind of glowing at this blanket as a child that I would go everywhere with. And I blissfully sat down in front of the TV and started watching my cartoons, and within 10 or 15 minutes, of course, my fathers, none of the members of my family were very good cooks. We were all terrible. And Sandy ran in there after 10 or 15 minutes, grabbed my green blanket that I was attached to, and she'd started a fire. She used my blanket on fire. She had to come back in, and the blanket was in tatters. All I had was the rim of the blanket left. And so that's my Sandy stories. I guess after all these years, I guess I can finally forgive her.
And I have to say that Sandy continued with this sort of cooking method.
Yeah, I didn't know.
There were several fires. Aram?
Great story.
Hi, I actually have no relation to Sandy, but so back in 2003, a child of mine, I was an exchange student that just came to America, and I originally had a host family that, so I originally had a host family when I first came to America that didn't work out too well with me. Also a very tough time. And I was about to be almost kicked out of Cherry Hill if I don't find a new host family. And my friends reached out to their friends, they found Faye, and Faye's parents started to adopt me during the rest of my period as an exchange student. And obviously they don't know anything about me. They took me in with warm hearts. Sorry, I didn't know Sandy passed until like a week ago when Scott sent me an email, and I was out of touch with going on with lives. I'm so sorry, Scott. But Sandy, even though it was less than warm person that, took me in, like, she's like family member and really shed good light to my dark times during that time. And I remember, like, even like during Thanksgiving dinner, like, their tradition was to have lobster instead of turkey. I was like, what? America's a great country. But seriously, Sandy and Scott and Alex, they, like, you guys were amazing people. And I flew from Texas just to attend this today, because I just wouldn't want to miss it for the, work with it. So, but thank you for letting me know. But Sandy was amazing.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jean Marias, and my husband, Larry, and I met Scott and Sandy in the late 70s in Ames, Iowa. And Scott and Larry were in the same lab group, getting their PhDs, and Sandy was working on her master's in food technology, and I didn't mean that. And I had a job in marketing communications with a scientific instrument company. So we all finished up and went our separate ways, and then Larry and Scott connected back in the late 80s, 90s? Late 80s. Larry's a good historian. Yeah. And so they got back together. Larry was doing service with Scott for scientific instruments, and then I took a foray from my career in scientific instruments as well and became a chiropractor. And we moved to the Midwest. And so after about 10 years, I decided that I didn't want to do that anymore. And so I asked Larry, hey, how's it going with Elementar? I think I want to get back into sales. And Larry goes, great, Sandy just fired all her reps. This is a great time to come on board. So I did, and she was the best boss I ever had. It was really wonderful, and two things I remember about her the most was she had this quiet persistence. Now, if you remember back in the day, it was Garmin. We didn't have the Google Maps, it was Garmin. And so there was one time we were driving together, we were trying to find this Indian restaurant, and we can't finding it. And I'm just like, no, let's just go somewhere else, it's okay. And she's like, no, we're gonna find it. And she's being really positive and patient about this, and I'm ready to throw that Garmin out the window because that Garmin lady's going, recalculate. Snarky voice. And then, but she also could let things go. She could just go with the flow when she needed to. And so one time we were in Virginia, and we got in the wrong lane, and it was the lane that went all the way to Dulles Airport. We couldn't get off. And Sandy just smiled, and we waved at the exit as we drove by. So I loved her. She was my friend.
I really didn't know Sandy up till a few years ago. She was a patient of ours at the MD Anderson Center. And part of I gave her radiation treatments for her cancer. We were very close in age, so we kind of hit it off. And part of giving treatments to patients every day is we talked to them. So we were having some, downtime, and I sat there with her, and we were chatting about our husbands. I said, oh wow, Sandy, my husband just retired. And all I want to do is buy a sailboat. She goes, you want to buy a sailboat? I'm like, yeah, he took this class, and now he's a captain, but no sailing experience, And again, you know, just out of the blue, she goes, Donna, I have the perfect solution for you. She goes, my husband Scott, he volunteers, and there's this with this big sailboat in Gloucester. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like perfect. Can you like get me some information, because it'll give him the experience that he needs. And really ever since then, we've been part of the Northwind family. And if it wasn't for Sandy, my husband wouldn't have this nice group of guys to hang out with. She was an excellent patient, never complained, and it was a pleasure taking care of her. And, you know, we tried to, you know, obviously, you know, cancer is what it is, but she was excellent person too, other than my patient.
My name's Tina Martin, and I met Sandy at college in Beloit, and we lived together in a house called Vegetable House. To become a member of Vegetable House, you had to say what kind of vegetable you thought you were. It's true. It's true. I never had to earn the wholehearted, caring friendship that Sandy gave me. She took me as I was, and that was that. No assessments. That was a revelation to me at Beloit. We fell in easily together, talked, experimented in the kitchen, including homemade bagels. We sat on the stupid Vegetable House and laughed. There was a long period when we were out of touch, but I'll never forget our conversations and letters when we had motherhood challenges or when illness intruded and the going got rough. I treasured her straightforwardness. She could be pretty modest about her insight and intelligence, but she had grit in approaching her work in plain sight. It was clear that nothing was going to get in her way. She has left me a gift of that laugh. It was unforgettable. I can hear it as I write this. The last few notes had a wildness to them that I especially loved. There was an anticipation about life and its promises that was always infectious. I guess that's why she liked the quote I sent her. She told me that she made it her tagline. Life isn't about waiting for the storm to pass. It's about learning to dance in the rain.
So how do I know Scott and Sandy and Alex? 26 years. We moved around the corner from where Scott and Sandy were living, and our dog at the time knew that if it could beeline directly across, it could hit Sandy and Scott's backyard. And they were generous enough to have a dog named Ben who got bones. And Calvin would steal Ben's bones. So one day, Scott reached out and said, "Your dog's stealing our dog's bones." And that was the beginning of a 26-year friendship where we shared holidays together, good times, difficult times, and we became like a family. Preston joined our family, Mary and Steve joined our family, and Minaj, I think, joined your family. Can't get rid of him. But from a wild dog who had no sense of boundaries, we found a friendship. And Alex was a little bit older than my daughter Sarah. When we moved in, Sarah was 4, and she went over to the Hugheses one day for a play date. And Sandy very generously said, "Would you like to stay for lunch?" And Sarah said, "What are you serving?" Sandy said, "I can make grilled cheese." So Sarah said, "Well, do you have Munster?" You're very specific.
Yes.
And Sarah said, "Well, it's chewy." So, Sandy went out and bought Munster cheese and
from that time on, when Sarah was little, if she went to the house, Sandy would say, I have monster cheese sandwich. And that's who she was. If she knew something special about you, or she knew something was interesting for you, she would take it to whatever level she could to make it wonderful. And even with my kids loving music and concerts, Scott and Sandy had a pass because their boat was docked at the marina where these concerts would take place. So I said to Sarah, well, if you ask nicely, maybe they'll let you use the parking pass. So Sandy said no problem at all. But in return, since you have a background in graphic design, I would like you to make a map.
That you heard about.
Northwood. Which Sarah said, no problem, I'll be delighted to. She always could marry people with their skill sets and their abilities. And as Scott said, she could have been a career counselor. I think she could have been a marriage broker. One of the sweetest, nicest people, and I know she touched everybody's life here. And from the parking area around here, you can see her reach went well beyond a small circle into a big pond. And we'll all miss her.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sam Philmott. I've known Scott and Sandy for about 25 years, a friend of the family. And when I go to their house, they had 4 dogs at the time, and now we have Bonnie and Clyde remaining, right? Given treats, they were terriers, right? And their love of animals is great, and they both love, still do, Mexican food up in Collingswood. And Scott just recently told me about, I think Scott and Sandy were planning to get married way back in the day, but there was an event, I think, that kind of hurried that along, wasn't it, Scott? And it didn't.
It's a whole story, yeah.
Something about a car loan?
Insurance, right?
Insurance.
Yeah.
It's another thing.
Cheaper if you were married.
So, but also, I found out that Sandy loved ice cream. So, to kind of honor her today, we have a little corner down there called Sandy's Ice Cream Corner in her remembrance. So, feel free. We have 2 different kinds of ice cream. I would have only bought one, but they didn't have 100 of the one. So, Sandy was extremely intelligent, very kind, very thoughtful. Just really a wonderful woman to know, and I really admire their relationship over 44 years. So God bless, and it was my pleasure knowing Sandy.
Diane?
Hi, I'm Diane, and I'm Sandy's sponsor. And it was 7 years ago that I met Sandy and began sponsoring her. She was the first person in New Jersey I sponsored. When I was in New Orleans, I probably sponsored 40-some people, throughout the years. And I, of course, you can ask my sponsor, I won't tell you this, but was the perfect sponsee there ever was. And then I got Sandy. And she was perfect. It's like if you said, do this, she set her the alarm on her Apple Watch to call me every day, because that was one of the prerequisites to the sponsorship. When I found out that Sandy died, I was going to go over there at noon on Saturday, basically to say goodbye, but that didn't work out. And I was like, why am I so devastated? I only knew Sandy for 7 years, And I think it's because she gave undivided, absolute attention to each individual in her life. Her generosity of spirit, She gave and gave and gave, and I think that's one of the reasons. When Sandy was working on becoming a medium, was my partner and a friend of many in here, Craig had died. And she would tell me she would be in her state and she would be talking to her grandfather or her mother or whatever it was, and Craig would barge in and be like, my mother needs to have Walt Whitman's sampler sugar-free candy for Easter. And guess who went out and got her candy? That was Sandy. And then he used to tell her that I needed to have white roses. Sandy goes, I didn't think you were a white rose person. I said, I'm not. But anyway, many a time Sandy came with a bouquet of white roses. So I don't know what my connection is going to be now, but I know there will be one. Also, with people at top, you didn't even have to really give Sandy a task. You could maybe talk about it, nonchalantly. And the next thing you would be getting websites and everything else based on it. I think maybe. And so she was my researcher, and I'm going to miss that because I'm looking for a puppy. And Sandy would have been the one to find it. When Sandy was in the hospital, I was with her one day when she was getting chemo, and this was like the first round early on where nothing was really known. And I said to her, Sandy, what's on your bucket list? And she said, oh, I don't know. And she thought, and she thought, and she thought. And she said, I wish I could volunteer more. So, little Sandy. But as time went on, and I was thinking about that this morning, it's also because Sandy lived life to the fullest. She did everything she wanted to do. Wasn't held back by, I don't know, or fear, or anything like that. She was so courageous. She told me that she had always wanted to be a princess, and especially acknowledged by her father as a princess. And so I had given her, a tiara and a wand. And then she was going through her the disease. I said, Sandy, what you are to me, you are my warrior princess. Because while she was sweet and while she was generous and all those things, Sandy had a strength that not many people I know ever did. Sorry for all the Hughes and all Sandy's friends, but I was so blessed to know her. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Anna, a college friend, and I just wanted to share that Sandy radiated joy and positivity, and she led by example. She was humble and quiet, especially when it came to that favorite human pastime of many of us, negativity. In other words, when I or others would often or sometimes criticize or complain about this or that, Sandy would just smile quietly and patiently, then redirect the conversation to something positive. She did not, to borrow a Yiddish term, kvetch. She embodied and exemplified the Quaker practices of letting one's inner light shine and seeing the light for good in others. And I so admire her, and I will greatly miss her, and I'm so sorry for your loss. Scott and family.
Hi, my name is Siki. I was married to Sandy's daughter, Faye. So I got a lot of stories I could tell up here, but we've been experiencing success, going on hiking trips in Iceland, over mountains and rivers. But honestly, my most deepest, fondest experience, and I mentioned stories about her, were just me and her sitting at home on the couch and just talking for hours, just getting to know each other, and it was so fun to me. And that how she would actually just show much interest in my hobbies, which I knew she was not interested in. I would talk about nerdy board games, I would talk about comic books, and my love of horror movies, and it was not her thing, but she would just listen to it. And I remember this one time where I'm a big fan of the TV show The Walking Dead. It was a zombie TV show. And I know she's not a big fan of horror, but she would actually say one time to me, Cindy, put it on. Okay. That came out of nowhere. And we would watch this horror TV show, and I thought it was a weird thing, but I realized very much what was happening here. It was not what we were watching, it was that she just wanted to be there with me, experiencing something that I liked. She didn't care what it was just being there with me. And that's, basically my story is just me and Sandy on the couch. Sounds like it was.
Good afternoon, Sandy. No matter what we were involved in, Sandy participated. That particular afternoon, we were all here making a quilt. We were making a quilt for our piano player who was going to have a child. Sandy had told us she couldn't come, she had other plans. We're all working, there's sewing machines everywhere, everybody's having fun, music's playing. In the door walks Sandy with material, with musical notes and signatures, and food for us. Healthy food, of course. And she had to run, but she came all the way up to our church to bring us material and to feed us, to make sure that we were okay while we were doing this project without her. And that was classic and typical of Sandy. Sandy was one of our most beloved, and we will never miss her because she'll always be with us.
Hello, my name is Bob Bevan, and I'm one of the board members of Biloxi City Sale. And we were very fortunate to have Sandy and Scott join us several years ago. And I can always remember, I guess the best memory I have of Sandy is that we were running sales during the 150th anniversary of the city at a car show. So she put the hand on them, and I had trouble with my hearing. Scott will tell you how much of a problem it is. I was trying to be a mate on the boat, and he said, Bob, get number 2 on. And I threw the anchor over. And it was always to hear him, And anyway, Sandy was taking, selling tickets for 1-hour cruises. And she said, Bob, it's $10. I was selling for 5. So I said, well, how about 2 for 5, Sandy? 2 for 10, I'm sorry. But the one thing I remember about Sandy is a picture is worth a million words, her heart was so bright that it radiated to her face. And I never saw her without a smile on her face. God bless her. God bless you.
Hi, I'm Chris Spurlow. My husband and I know Sandy and Scott from UCCH. And as I've been listening to everybody's stories, I can just echo everything that everyone has said about Sandy, her kindness and selflessness and joy and positivity. But the story that I want to relate exhibits a trait in her that I found particularly admirable. She was fiercely protective of the people that she loved. She caught me one day after coffee hour at church, and she was upset because someone was quibbling with Scott. Right? Anyhow, as she was relating the story to me, she was getting very, very passionate, and finally she just said, "You know, he is right 95% of the time." 95% of the time.
Lisa?
Is everybody else?
Oh, Peter? Yeah.
My name is Pia, and I knew Sandy through one of her daughters, Alexandra. We were friends at Orchard Friends School, one of the few schools that had opened around that time that was with kids with learning disabilities, like really specialized. And Alexandra was the first friend that I ever made at that school, and the first friend that I ever came over to a house of, and that was when I met her mom. Now I saw her mom a couple of times during like school time because Alexandra and I went to the after school program. And one of the things that I remember, though I can't tell you any particular stories, I can definitely tell you the feelings that I had when I was there. Sandy felt like another mom. She really did. You know how there's like some family, like some friend houses that you go to and you get the feeling like, oh, I don't know if her parents like me. But with Sandy, with the extension of Scott as well, they were so welcoming and they were so loving, and I just remember so many memories being over at that house and feeling like I'm welcomed and how much it really hurt to see that. I miss her. That's all.
Pierce?
I'm Piers. I work with Sandy at EA Consumables. She was actually the one that got me the job. Made me was that my mom cornered in a bathroom and kind of told me to hire my son to get out of the bedroom. So she took a chance on me. And not to insult the place, kind of got mundane every now and then. But every day when I walked into the office, opened the door, the first thing I would hear every day at work was, "Time flies when you're having fun." And every day, I don't know if she realized she said it every day. Every day, that was the first thing I could hear from her. It set the mood for the working day, because it showed that, she wanted to have fun working with us. She wanted us to have fun and enjoy what we were doing. And she took all the minor details of the day and tried to make them special and fun. So on the door on the calendar that had all the stupid small holidays like Flag Day or Pie Day or any of those. And she would try to make them special. So for Pie Day, she would buy me an entire pie. I'm one person, I can't eat an entire pie. Even for the more minuscule, silly holidays like Left-Handed Day. She would buy me cookies, because I was the only left-handed person in the office. So I just get a bag of cookies, and I was like, alright. Don't know if this is supposed to call me out or something, but the first thing is, she made it special. All the small details, all the things people pass by, she tried to make them bigger and grandiose, and she really just wanted to let you know that, she thought about you and she cared about you. And that's all I'd say.
Lisa Winkler again, and I've known Sandy for more than 20 years. We met when we joined the Unitarian Universalist Church in Cherry Hill, and spent many years in the religious education program teaching our children. My two sons and her two daughters are about the same age. And it's like, you just can't say enough about someone like Sandy who has such a fun spirit and a generous nature. And this was actually contagious. I mean, you actually were a better person when you were in her presence because that positivity of hers was so strong. Sandy was very intelligent, and she had a rare combination of IQ and EQ, emotional quotient as well. And I think that's one of the things that made her so excellent in sales, because she had that combination, and that gave her the ability to connect and understand people so well. Sandy was approachable and had the ability to form fast relationships. She only spent 1 week in Zagreb, Romania, more than 15 years ago, and when I let the villagers know that she had passed, there was this outpouring of remembrances about Sandy. There's a poster that you'll see downstairs of some of the photos that people sent to me about their time together. And I'd like to read a letter that came from Akash Biash, one of the villagers. And he says, "Dear sisters and brothers and members of UUCCH in Cherry Hill, I write in the name of members of the Unitarian Church from Zagreb who remember Sandy as a nice and friendly person from the visit of your church's delegation in 2007. She was a great ambassador of the brotherhood and love between the Unitarians on both sides of the ocean. She was involved in sister church programs between Cherry Hill and Zagreb. We remember her while she worked in the village's graveyard by cleaning the old gravestones of our previous ministers and gathering up dried weeds. We also remember her dancing with our church members and our youth at a welcoming party. We were fortunate to have her among us, even for such a short time. She made a deep impact on the life of all the host families from the village. And we send our condolences to Scott and Alex. May God rest her in peace. Sincerely, Akash." And then I actually have a few things that I want to say, because Sandy was such a devoted friend to me. She never stopped checking in on me to make sure I was okay. And Sandy received messages from my son, which he then passed on to me. And we've heard so many stories today about the kindnesses that Sandy was able to do, and so many of the thoughtful things that she did for people. One of the things she and I would do was go for walks when our children were in middle school and high school. And she had been doing research on a lot of the private schools around there, and we were looking for a place for our son. And Sandy came up with the perfect recommendation from all of her research for our son Tristan, and we put him in Orchard Frame School, which turned out to be a great place for him. So we were just very glad to be able to take advantage of Sandy's wisdom there. One of the things that impressed me about Sandy was when she was first diagnosed with cancer. One of the first things she told me was that she really wasn't wrapped up in herself and her own illness and what she was going to have to go through and what might happen. Instead, she immediately started talking about volunteer efforts and what she wanted to do. And she said, "There's two things I want to do, and one is work with the blind, and the other thing is work on literacy." So Sandy threw herself in working in best at work industries for the blind. I think we've heard about that today. And so much so that she was eventually asked to join the board. She became a volunteer for literacy volunteers of Camden County, something that she took very, very seriously. And 10 days before she passed, I stopped by her house, and there was Sandy on the phone talking with another volunteer, planning an incentive program for the clients. She was absolutely unstoppable. And while Sandy was outgoing and very interested in others, there was a piece of her that she held back. And she didn't divulge how grueling the chemo or the radiation therapies had been, or even dwell or tell you very much about her illness. And I didn't didn't realize how sick she was until we went on a cruise together just last January and February. Sandy didn't complain at all, but we could see how tired she was. She couldn't go on the excursions off the boat because she was so weak. But she made sure that there was nothing that was going to spoil the experience for me and my husband. And it wasn't really until we got back to New Jersey that I realized how sick she was. While we were sailing though, a person called me looking for housing. And this is a person who's very low income. It's difficult to find housing. There's not a lot of options there. I want you to know, Sandy got on her phone right then and there as I told her about the situation and started calling up friends of hers trying to find a place for this friend to live. She wasn't focused on herself, but she was focused on helping others. And I think this is the characteristic of Sandy that most impressed me and that I would really love to be able to emulate. And that's how generous she was and how eager she was to help other people. Sandy was loved, and she loved, and she's going to be greatly missed.
You know, we can continue downstairs at the reception and with other conversations with each other about Sandy and so forth. The stairs are in the back here, and so you know, invite everybody to come down and enjoy something to eat and drink, and there's some slideshows and stuff with Sandy down there. Thank you, everybody, so very much.